The morning sky above Seoul turned black as enormous ships blotted out the sun. Tae-ho Kim stood at his office window, watching the massive vessels hover silently over the city. Similar reports were coming in from around the world. Tokyo, New York, London, Mumbai, all had the same dark shadows hanging above them. His phone buzzed constantly with emergency calls. As South Korea's lead diplomat for refugee affairs, Tae-ho had dealt with many crises before. But nothing like this. These weren't human refugees fleeing war. These were the ones bringing the war. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. Each one was the size of a city district, made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed along their hulls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They made no sound, but somehow everyone could feel their presence pressing down like a heavy weight. Across the city, So-min Park was collecting water samples from the Han River when the first ship appeared. She dropped her equipment and stared upward, her scientific mind trying to process what she was seeing. The ship's shadow fell across the water, and she noticed something odd. The river temperature was rising. Whatever powered those ships was heating the air around them. So-min grabbed her phone and started taking readings. If these were visitors from another world, they might need to know about Earth's environment. Water temperature, oxygen levels, atmospheric pressure. All data that could be important for first contact. She had spent years studying how different species adapted to new environments. Maybe that knowledge could help now. In the busy streets of Myeongdong, Jin Lee was serving lunch to his regular customers when the ship's shadow fell over his food cart. People stopped eating and pointed at the sky. Some screamed. Others prayed. Jin looked up at the massive vessel and did what he always did in difficult times. He kept cooking. "The food will get cold," he told his customers gently. "Whatever happens, we should not waste good food." His calm voice helped settle the people around him. Jin had lived through hard times before. As a young man, he had organized his neighborhood during the economic crisis, making sure everyone had enough to eat. He knew that fear made people do foolish things, but kindness could keep them strong. Dr. Haewon Choi was in her clinic when the ships arrived. She was talking to 8-year-old Mira, who had been having nightmares since her parents died in a car accident. The little girl was drawing pictures of her family when the room suddenly became dark. "The sun went away," Mira whispered, looking out the window. Haewon saw the ship hanging above them like a dark cloud. She had spent 15 years helping children deal with trauma and fear. Now she faced something that terrified her too, but Mira was watching her face, looking for clues about how scared she should be. "It looks like we have visitors," Haewon said calmly. "Sometimes when people come from very far away, they look different from us. But that doesn't mean they want to hurt us." She hoped she was right. At exactly noon, every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth received the same message. The voice was deep and harsh, speaking in perfect but emotionless English. "People of Earth, I am Commander Vex of the Keth Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have two choices: surrender and serve the Empire, or resist and be destroyed. You have 24 hours to decide." The message repeated in every human language: Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, Korean. The aliens had learned them all. Images appeared on screen showing other worlds that had faced the same choice. Burned cities, empty planets, species that no longer existed because they had chosen to fight. The Keth Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Their pattern was always the same: arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender. Those who submitted became slaves, working in mines and factories to feed the Empire's endless hunger for resources. Those who resisted were eliminated completely. In emergency meetings around the world, military leaders argued for immediate attack. The ships were powerful, but Earth had nuclear weapons. Maybe they could damage the alien fleet before it was too late. But Tae-ho found himself thinking about the refugees he had helped over the years, families who had traveled far from home, frightened and desperate. They often arrived angry and demanding, because fear made people act aggressive when they felt threatened. He remembered So-min's research on migration patterns. Animals that traveled long distances were usually looking for something they couldn't find at home. Food, water, safe places to raise their young. What if these aliens were not so different? As the world's leaders gathered for an emergency video conference, Tae-ho made a decision that would change everything. When it was his turn to speak, he ignored the prepared military response. "Commander Vex," he said, looking directly into the camera, I am Tae-ho Kim. I speak for the people of Earth. We have received your message. But before we respond, we want to know something. You have traveled very far to reach us. You must be tired. You must be hungry. What do you need? The silence that followed lasted for several long minutes. In the Keith flagship above Seoul, Commander Vex stared at the human's image on his screen. In 47 conquests, no species had ever asked what the Keth needed. They had offered tribute, threatened war, begged for mercy, or simply run away. But none had asked about the Keth themselves. Vex was a veteran warrior who had spent 3 decades serving the Empire. He had learned not to think about needs or wants. Warriors took what the Empire required. They did not ask for things. They did not receive gifts. They conquered. But this small human with kind eyes had asked a question that Vex had not heard since he was a child on the dying homeworld of Keth Prime. What do you need? The question echoed in his mind as he tried to remember what need felt like. The Empire had taught him that need was weakness. Want was failure. Only strength mattered. And strength was measured by what you could take from others. Yet as Vex looked down at the blue and green world below, he found himself thinking about things he had not considered in years. When had he last eaten food that was not a military ration? When had anyone offered him something without expecting conquest in return? The human was still waiting for an answer. Around the world, billions of people watched their screens waiting to learn their fate. But in that moment, Vex found himself facing a question more dangerous than any weapon. What did he need? Commander Vex did not answer Tae-ho's question. He cut the transmission and left his officers confused and worried. For the first time in his military career, he did not know what to do next. But Tae-ho's words had been heard around the world. Within hours, something extraordinary began to happen. Instead of preparing for war, humans started preparing gifts. It began in Seoul, where Jin Lee gathered the street food vendors from across the city. These visitors have come very far, he told them. They must be hungry. We should prepare food for them. The vendors thought Jin was crazy at first. Cook for alien invaders? But Jin's calm confidence was infectious. Soon hundreds of food carts were working together, preparing massive amounts of kimchi, bulgogi, and rice dishes. The spicy, fermented smells filled the air even under the shadow of the alien ships. So-min Park was thinking about the heating effect she had measured around the ships. The aliens clearly had different biology than humans. Their ships ran hot, which might mean they came from a warmer world. She started organizing marine biologists across Asia to prepare gifts of seaweed, fish, and sea plants that could grow in warm water. If they're from a hot, dry planet, they might need foods that can survive in difficult conditions, she explained to her research team. Ocean plants are some of the most adaptable life forms on Earth. In her clinic, Dr. Haewon Choi was helping parents explain the situation to their children. 8-year-old Mira had an idea that surprised everyone. Maybe they're lonely, the little girl said. When I was sad after Mom and Dad died, you gave me crayons and paper. Maybe the space people would like pictures too. Within hours, children across Seoul were drawing welcome pictures. Stick figures of humans and aliens holding hands. Colorful drawings of spaceships next to Earth. Simple messages written in crayon. Welcome to Earth and we are friends. The movement spread rapidly across the globe. In New York, restaurants began preparing massive amounts of food. In London, musicians gathered to record welcome songs. In Mumbai, textile workers created beautiful fabrics as gifts. In Tokyo, origami artists folded thousands of paper cranes. Scientists shared their knowledge of Earth's resources. Farmers offered seeds and samples of crops. Artists created paintings and sculptures. Even weapons manufacturers stopped making bombs and started making tools that could be gifted instead. The world's military leaders were horrified. This is madness, they argued. We're showing weakness to an enemy that wants to destroy us. But Tae-ho stood firm. They came expecting conquest. Let's give them something they don't expect instead. Aboard the Keth flagship, Vex watched in confusion as cargo planes and helicopters began approaching his fleet. His weapons officer, Drac, was eager to destroy them. Commander, the humans are launching some kind of attack, Drac reported. Should we fire? Vex studied the approaching vehicles. They were not military craft. They were civilian transports flying slowly and broadcasting friendly signals. As they got closer, he could see that their cargo bays were open, showing no weapons inside. What are they carrying? Vex asked. His scanner operator, a young Keth named Ral, looked puzzled. The readings are strange, Commander. The ships are full of organic compounds, complex molecular structures, and objects made of various materials. I don't understand the purpose. The first transport stopped just outside the Keth ship's defensive perimeter. A human voice came over the radio speaking slowly and clearly. This is Captain Lee of Korean Air Force Transport 7. We are carrying gifts of food and friendship for our visitors. We request permission to deliver these items to your ship. Vex had never heard anything like this in 30 years of conquest. Enemy species tried to attack, hide, or surrender. They did not request permission to give gifts. Commander, Drax said urgently, this is obviously some kind of trick. We should destroy them now. But Vex was thinking about the human diplomat's question. What did they need? The Keth Empire had been traveling and fighting for so long that basic needs like fresh food had become distant memories. Their ships carried protein rations and water recyclers, but nothing that could be called a meal. Allow one transport to approach, Vex decided, but maintain full shields and weapons ready. The transport docked carefully with the massive Keth ship. The airlock opened, and 3 humans stepped aboard. They wore no armor and carried no weapons. Instead, they pushed containers that released wonderful smells. Vex met them in the docking bay, surrounded by armed Keth warriors. The lead human was an older woman with gentle eyes. She bowed politely. I am Dr. Park Soman, she said. We have brought food from our world. Fresh vegetables, prepared fish, and fermented foods that can help with digestion during long space travel. She opened one of the containers. Inside were neatly arranged dishes that looked nothing like military rations. Bright colors, complex textures, and smells that made Vex's mouth water despite himself. We know you have come very far. Soman continued. Space travel must be difficult. These foods are designed to provide good nutrition and restore energy after long journeys. One of the younger Keth warriors, Ral, stepped forward curiously. You made this for us? Even though we are here to conquer you. Soman smiled. You are far from home. You must miss the foods of your own world. We cannot give you that, but we can share what we have. She offered him a small portion of kimchi on a simple ceramic plate. Ral looked at Vex, who nodded slowly. The young warrior tasted the fermented cabbage and his eyes widened. It was spicy, complex, alive with flavors that their rations could never provide. It's good, Ral said in surprise. It tastes like the preserved foods my grandmother used to make on Keth Prime, before the soil became too damaged to grow fresh vegetables. More containers were opened. Grilled meats that reminded the Keth of hunting feasts from their youth. Sea vegetables that provided minerals their bodies craved after months in space. Sweet rice cakes that tasted like celebrations they had almost forgotten. As the Keth warriors tried the human food, something strange happened. They began to remember what it felt like to be guests instead of conquerors. To receive gifts instead of taking tribute. Vex found himself holding a cup of warm tea that smelled like the flowers that once grew on his homeworld. The human Dr. Park had given it to him personally, explaining how the herbs would help with stress and fatigue. Why? He asked her. Why do you give us gifts when we have come to take your world? Soman looked at him with those same gentle eyes. Because you are far from home. Because you are tired. Because kindness costs us nothing, but it might mean everything to you. For the first time in decades, Vex did not know what to say. He had been trained to conquer, to demand, to take. But no one had ever trained him how to receive a gift given freely, with no conditions attached. As more transports arrived with food and gifts, the Keth fleet found itself facing something more dangerous than any weapon humanity could have used. They were facing unexpected kindness. And kindness, Vex was beginning to realize, could change everything. 3 days had passed since the first food delivery. The Keth fleet was in chaos. Half the ships were now accepting regular deliveries of human gifts. The other half, led by War Commander Drac, demanded immediate conquest. Vex stood in his command chamber, staring at reports that made no sense. Human children were sending drawings to his warriors. The pictures showed Keth and humans playing together, sharing meals, building things side by side. His soldiers were keeping these drawings in their personal quarters. Even more confusing, the humans had requested permission to send a small delegation aboard his flagship. Not to negotiate surrender, but to properly welcome our guests and learn about their needs. This is madness, Commander, Drax said for the 10th time that day. The humans are making fools of us. The other fleets will hear about this. Our reputation as conquerors will be destroyed. Vex touched the warm cup of tea that Dr. Park had brought him. His third cup today. He had not realized how much he missed the simple pleasure of drinking something that tasted good. Let the delegation come, he decided, but small numbers only, 5 humans maximum. When the human shuttle arrived, Tae-ho Kim led the group. With him came Dr. Haewon Choi, Jin Lee, and 2 other specialists. They brought no weapons, no recording devices, nothing that could be used for spying. Instead, they carried more food, some books, and gifts from Earth's children. Vex met them in his private conference room, a space usually reserved for planning military operations. The humans looked around with curious but respectful eyes. "Your ship is magnificent," Tae-ho said honestly. "The engineering must be incredible to travel between stars." It was another unexpected comment. Conquered species usually focused on the weapons and the threat. They did not appreciate Keth technology or craftsmanship. Dr. Haewon was studying Vex's face with professional interest. As a psychologist, she could see signs of stress, exhaustion, and something else: loneliness. "Commander Vex," she said gently, "you look tired. How long have you been away from your home?" The question hit Vex like a physical blow. When had anyone last asked about his well-being? In the Empire, showing tiredness was showing weakness. Commanders were expected to be strong at all times. 7 years, he answered before he could stop himself. "This is my 7th year of conquest missions." Haewon's expression softened. 7 years is a long time to be away from family and familiar places. "Do you have family on your homeworld?" Vex found himself talking about things he had not mentioned in years. His younger sister Kira, who was training to be an engineer. His nephew Tor, who would be starting school soon. The gardens his mother used to tend before the soil became too polluted for growing food. "The homeworlds are struggling," he admitted. "That's why we expand the Empire. We need resources, new planets, fresh supplies. Conquest is survival for us." The humans exchanged glances. This was information they had hoped for but not expected to receive so easily. Jin Lee, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Commander, forgive me for asking, but what kind of resources do your people need most?" Vex was surprised by his own willingness to answer. "Clean water, fertile soil, protein sources that can grow in damaged environments. Our scientists have tried to repair our worlds, but the damage from centuries of industrial expansion was too severe." So-min Park, who had joined them by video link from Earth, leaned forward excitedly. "Commander, Earth has expertise in environmental restoration. We've learned how to clean polluted soil and water. We've developed plants that can grow in hostile conditions. If your people need these things, perhaps we can help." "Help?" Vex repeated the word like it was foreign to him. "You would help us? Even though we came to conquer you?" Tae-ho nodded. "That's exactly why we want to help. You came here because your people are suffering. Suffering should be healed, not ignored." Dr. Haewon had been watching the younger Keth warriors who served as guards in the room. She noticed their body language, the way they stood at attention, but their eyes showed curiosity about the humans. "Your soldiers are very young," she observed. "Some of them look like they've never seen their homeworld." Vex glanced at his guards. It was true. Ral and the others had been born on ships or conquered worlds. They knew Keth culture only through military training and stories from older warriors. "The young ones have only known conquest," Vex said quietly. "They have never experienced what it feels like to be welcomed somewhere." Haewon stood and approached young Ral, moving slowly so as not to seem threatening. "What's your name?" she asked in a kind voice. "Ral, ma'am," the young warrior answered, looking nervous. "How old are you, Ral?" 20 standard years, ma'am." Haewon smiled. "You're the same age as my nephew. He's studying engineering at university. What did you want to be when you were a child before you became a warrior?" Ral looked confused by the question. I have always been a warrior, ma'am. It is my purpose, yeah, but before training. When you were small, did you ever dream about doing something else?" The young Keth thought for a long moment. "I like to fix things. Broken equipment, damaged systems. I was good at making things work again." Jin Lee reached into his bag and pulled out a small electronic device, a radio that had been deliberately broken. "Could you fix this?" he asked, offering it to Ral. Ral looked at Vex, who nodded permission. The young warrior examined the radio carefully, his hands moving with practiced skill. Within minutes, he had identified the problem and repaired it. When static changed to clear music, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. "You're a natural engineer," Jin said admiringly. On Earth, we always need people who can fix things and make them better. For the first time since boarding the ship, the humans saw Keth smile. The conversation continued for hours. Vex found himself sharing more about Keth's society, their struggles, their fears for the future. The humans listened without judgment, offering ideas and resources instead of criticism. When Dr. Park suggested that Earth's oceans could provide enough food to feed both species, Vex felt something he had not experienced in years: hope. When Taeho mentioned that Earth had empty land where Keth refugees could settle while their homeworlds were being restored, Vex began to wonder if conquest was really the only option. But it was Dr. Haewan's final comment that shook him most deeply. "Commander," she said as the meeting ended, "you've spent 7 years taking things from other worlds to help your people survive. But what if there was a world willing to share what it had freely? What if you didn't have to take any more?" That night, Vex stood alone in his quarters, staring out at the blue and green planet below. For 47 conquests, he had looked down at worlds and seen only resources to be claimed. Tonight, for the first time, he saw something else. He saw a home that might welcome the Keth not as conquerors, but as guests. The thought terrified him more than any battle he had ever fought. The battle in Earth's sky raged for 3 days. Drax's forces had superior numbers, but Vex's ships fought with desperate determination. They were not just fighting for military victory anymore. They were fighting for the right to choose a different future. On Earth, humanity watched the impossible sight of alien ships destroying each other in defense of their world. The response was typically human and completely insane by any military standard. They sent medical supplies to both sides. "Commander Vex," So-Min Park broadcast to the Keth fleet, "we have prepared medical seaweed extracts that can help heal battle injuries. We're also ready to treat any wounded warriors regardless of which side they're fighting for." Drax was furious when he intercepted the message. "The humans mock us," he told his officers. "They offer aid to their enemies while we kill each other above their heads." But some of Drax's own warriors were beginning to have doubts. Commander Hex of the 3rd Assault Ship had watched human cargo vessels flying directly into battle zones to deliver medical supplies to damaged Keth ships. The humans were risking their lives to help aliens who were trying to conquer them. "Sir," Hex said carefully during a strategy meeting, "perhaps we should consider that the humans might be sincere. They've had many chances to attack our damaged ships, but they only offer help." Drax's response was swift and brutal. He declared Hex a traitor and had him arrested. The message to the fleet was clear. Any commander who showed sympathy for the human approach would face consequences. This harsh response pushed more Keth toward Vex's side. Young warriors who had joined the Empire to protect their people began to question whether conquest was really protection. Raul, the young engineer, had become an unofficial ambassador between the Keth factions and the humans. His ship was one of the few that both sides would allow to dock, since he carried medical supplies from Earth. During one supply run, he met with Dr. Haewan Choi, who had established a field hospital for wounded Keth warriors. "Doctor," Raul said, "I don't understand your people. We came to destroy you and you heal our wounds. We fight above your cities and you send us food. Why?" Haewan was treating a Keth warrior who had been injured when his ship was hit by weapons fire. She cleaned his wounds gently while she answered. "Because that's what people do when someone is hurt," she said simply. "We help them get better, even enemies. Especially enemies. If we only help our friends, we'll always have enemies. But if we help our enemies, maybe they'll become our friends." Raul watched her work. The injured warrior was from Drax's faction, one of the aliens still trying to conquer Earth. But Haewan treated him with the same care she would give to her own family. "On Keth ships, we have medical bays for warriors," Raul said thoughtfully. "But no one talks to us while we heal. No one asks if we're afraid or sad." "You do both. You heal bodies and minds," Haewan smiled. "Bodies and minds are connected. You can't heal one without caring for the other." That conversation changed Raul forever. He began sharing what he learned with other young Keth warriors. Soon, a new idea was spreading through both fleets. Maybe there was a different way to be strong. The turning point came when Drax made his most desperate move. His flagship, the Crushing Fist, broke from the battle formation and aimed directly at Sol. If he couldn't defeat Vex's fleet, he would destroy the human city that had started all this madness. "I will show these humans the price of corrupting Keth warriors," Drax announced as his ship descended toward Earth's atmosphere. But something went wrong. The Crushing Fist's engines, damaged in 3 days of battle, began to fail. Instead of a controlled attack, the massive ship became a falling missile aimed at the heart of Sol. "All ships," Drac broadcast in panic. "Assistance required. We are going down." Vex faced an impossible choice. He could let his greatest enemy crash and burn, eliminating the threat to both Earth and his own vision for the future, or he could try to save the warriors on a ship that had been trying to kill him for 3 days. He chose to save them. "All available ships, move to assist the Crushing Fist," Vex ordered. "We are not going to let any Keth die today," but they were too far away. Even at maximum speed, Vex's ships couldn't reach Drac's vessel before it hit the ground. The only ship close enough to help was one of the human cargo vessels that had been delivering medical supplies. Captain Park, Junho of the Korean emergency response ship, watched the alien vessel falling toward his city. He had 2 minutes to make a decision that would affect millions of lives. He flew his ship directly into the path of the falling Keth vessel. Using his ship's cargo grapples and emergency thrusters, Captain Park managed to slow the Crushing Fist's descent just enough for it to crash into the Han River instead of the city center. The impact destroyed both ships, but it saved Sol. Captain Park died in the crash. His last radio message was heard by both human and Keth receivers. "Jin Lee, make sure there's hot food ready for the survivors. They'll be scared and hurt." When rescue teams reached the crash site, they found Drac and 12 of his warriors alive but injured. The first thing they saw when they regained consciousness was not human soldiers pointing weapons at them, but Jin Lee and his volunteers serving warm soup to anyone who needed it. Drac, the proud war commander who had sworn to conquer or destroy Earth, found himself sitting by the river, accepting food from the hands of a human street vendor who asked nothing in return, except that he eat enough to regain his strength. "Why?" Drac asked Jin, his voice broken by pain and confusion. "Your people died saving us. We were your enemies." Jin sat down beside the alien warrior, offering him another bowl of soup. "Captain Park died saving Sol," he said gently. "You just happened to be in Seoul at the time. He would have done the same thing for anyone." That night, for the first time in his adult life, Drac cried, not from pain or defeat, but from the overwhelming realization of what kindness looked like when it was real. The Civil War ended the next morning. Without their leader's harsh commands, Drac's remaining ships began accepting medical aid and food from the humans. Young warriors who had been forced to fight were finally free to choose peace. Vex broadcast a message to the entire galaxy, knowing that other Keth fleets would hear it and carry word back to the Empire. "I am Commander Vex of the Keth Imperial Fleet," he began. "I came to Earth to conquer another world for the Empire. Instead, I found something the galaxy has never seen before. I found a species that conquers hatred with kindness, that defeats enemies by making them into friends." He paused, looking down at the blue and green world that had changed everything he believed about strength and power. "I formally request permission to surrender the Keth fleet to Earth," he continued. "Not as prisoners of war, but as guests who hope to learn how to be worthy of the welcome they have received." In the United Nations building in New York, Tae-ho Kim stood before the assembled representatives of Earth's nations and gave humanity's response. "We accept your surrender, Commander Vex, but not as conquerors accepting the defeat of our enemies. We accept it as friends welcoming guests who have traveled far from home." The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin. War Commander Drac had seen enough. For 6 days he had watched Vex accept gifts from the humans like some kind of beggar. Half the fleet was now acting more like tourists than conquerors. Warriors were trading military rations for human food. Some were even learning human words. It was disgusting. Drac called a secret meeting with the commanders who still believed in the old ways. They gathered on his ship, the Crushing Fist, to plan what they called the correction. "Vex has been compromised," Drac announced to the assembled officers. "The humans have used some kind of mental weapon on him. Psychological warfare. They're making him weak with their false kindness." Commander Hex of the 3rd Assault Ship nodded agreement. "My warriors report that Vex's crew is accepting gifts daily. They're becoming soft, dependent on human generosity. The Empire will not tolerate this failure," Drac continued. "If Vex will not complete the conquest, we will do it ourselves. The humans have shown us their major cities, their resource centers, their population hubs. We can destroy them all within hours." The plan was simple and brutal. While Vex was distracted by another human delegation, Drac's ships would break formation and begin orbital bombardment. Once the major cities were burning, the remaining humans would surrender or die. Either way, the conquest would be complete. But not everyone in Drax's meeting was convinced. Young Ral, who had been ordered to attend as a representative of Vex's crew, listened with growing horror. "Sir," Ral said carefully, "what about the children who sent us drawings? And the food preparers who work all day to feed us? They will die in the bombardment." Drax's eyes turned cold. "They are not Keth. Their survival is not our concern." After the meeting, Ral returned to Vex's ship deeply troubled. The humans had treated him with more kindness in 6 days than the Empire had shown him in 20 years. The thought of burning their cities made him feel sick. On Earth, the Great Offering continued to grow. Entire nations were now participating in what media had started calling the most ambitious diplomatic mission in human history. Somin Park had organized teams of marine biologists across the Pacific. They were collecting samples of sea life that could survive in extreme conditions. If the Keth homeworlds were as damaged as Vex had described, these organisms might be the key to ecological restoration. Jin Lee had expanded his food preparation network to include restaurants and food vendors from 50 countries. Massive kitchens were working around the clock to provide fresh meals for the Keth fleet. But more importantly, they were documenting everything: recipes, preparation methods, preservation techniques that could be shared with Keth colonies. Dr. Haewon Choi had begun the galaxy's first interspecies psychological support program. She was teaching human counselors how to recognize trauma in Keth warriors, while learning about Keth mental health from the aliens themselves. But it was Tae-Ho Kim who made the discovery that changed everything. During his daily meetings with Vex, Tae-Ho had been learning about Keth history. The Empire, he learned, had not always been a conquering force. Centuries ago, the Keth had been scientists and artists, known throughout their local galaxy for beautiful architecture and advanced environmental technology. The change had come when their star began to die prematurely. Solar flares and radiation had poisoned their homeworlds. Desperate to save their people, the Keth had turned to conquest as the only way to find new homes and resources. So the Empire was born from desperation, not greed, Tae-Ho realized. "Yes," Vex confirmed sadly. "We became what we needed to become to survive. But in saving our bodies, we lost our souls." Tae-Ho shared this information with Earth's leaders, and it sparked a new phase of the Great Offering. Instead of just providing food and comfort, humanity began offering something far more valuable: hope for the future. Environmental scientists started working on plans to restore Keth homeworlds. Engineers designed new solar shields that could protect planets from dying stars. Agricultural experts developed seed banks that could survive in damaged soil. But most importantly, educators began creating programs to help young Keth rediscover their people's original culture of science and art. When Vex learned about these projects, he was overwhelmed. "You would do this for us? Even after we threatened to destroy you?" "Especially because you threatened us," Tae-Ho replied. "Threats come from fear and desperation. We want to heal the source of that pain, not just protect ourselves from its symptoms." That evening, Vex made a decision that would split his fleet forever. He sent a message to all Keth ships. "I am calling an end to this conquest mission. The humans have offered us a better path forward. Any warrior who wishes to return to the Empire may do so with honor. Any who wish to explore this new possibility may remain." The response was immediate and violent. Drax's faction, nearly half the fleet, broke formation and began charging their weapons. "Vex is a traitor," Drax broadcast to all ships. "The humans have corrupted him. We will complete this conquest as the Empire demands." The civil war began at sunset. Keth ships turned their weapons on each other while Earth watched in horror from below. The sky filled with energy. Blasts and explosions as two visions of the future fought for. Supremacy Vex found himself in the impossible position of defending the world he had come to conquer from the forces he had once commanded. In Seoul, Jin Lee watched the battle and made a decision that perfectly captured humanity's response to the impossible situation. He organized every food vendor in the city to prepare emergency rations, not just for the humans who might be injured if the battle came to Earth, but for the Keth warriors on both sides. "They are fighting because they are scared and hungry and far from home," he explained to reporters. "When the fighting stops, they will still be scared and hungry. We should be ready to help all of them." Dr. Haywan was already preparing trauma counseling for both sides of the conflict. Soman was calculating how much medical seaweed extract they could produce to treat battle injuries. Taeho was drafting messages of support for any Keth who wanted to defect from the fighting. Even as energy weapons lit up the night sky above them, humanity continued its impossible response to invasion. They offered help to everyone, even their enemies. In his command chair, Vex watched human cities prepare aid for both Keth factions and realized something that would haunt him forever. Humanity was not just offering the Keth a chance to change. They were offering them a chance to become worthy of the kindness they had received.